This morning, we're talking about bipolar. Casey Chambers is here with me this morning in the studio. I'm going to be introducing you in a minute to my other guest. But Casey, why should we worry about bipolar?
It affects so many South Africans in the country.
So many.
It's probably now between 4 to 6% of the population, and you think,
6% of the population.
4 to 6%.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. And it sounds like a small amount, but think of the amount of South Africans who are living with bipolar who don't know where to get help, where to get treatment, or that there is support out there. We run a call center that has a dedicated bipolar helpline, and we receive so many calls on a daily basis from loved ones, colleagues, patients living with bipolar that didn't know that there is help. So it's really, really important that we highlight this. It is a real medical illness that needs real treatment. So, for example, if you have diabetes or hypertension or cancer, you get real treatment. The same thing with bipolar disorder. You need real treatment.
Yeah, but let me also welcome on the other line Dr. Neil Horn, a psychiatrist, joining us on the line this morning.
Bipolar disorder requires you to have an episode of mania, and that's the difference between bipolar disorder and depression. So in bipolar disorder, a lot of people have a number of episodes of depression, but what makes it bipolar is when they go up in mood and have a manic episode. And those manic episodes can be longer, that's over a week, and severe, or they might be milder, less than a week, but more than 3 days, and not as severe. We'd call that a hypomanic episode. Mania. I'll tell you what Stephen Fry described himself as, because he's a celebrity who's openly describes himself having mania. And his description is, I'm writing and I'm doing stuff and I'm so grandiose and so full of self-belief that it's almost impossible to deal with me. I'm so hyper that I can go for 3 or 4 nights without sleeping. So that's a lovely description of what it's like to be manic. So full of energy, you're unstoppable. Some people call you the Duracell bunny, and it's an increased mood. So people are usually euphoric, very happy, can sometimes become irritable when things are going too slowly for them. Speed it up, and the description is very similar to someone who is high on drugs like cocaine, and that can often lead to a lot of confusion about whether the person is mentally ill or taking drugs or possibly even doing both.
Exactly. It could be just their personality and what they do. Maybe it's their job. Often we have callers who tell us, but I feel sad and happy all in one day. And we have what normal mood swings, where you feel happy sometimes and you feel a bit down. But with bipolar disorder is you have these extreme shifts in your mood. So when you're happy, you're ecstatic. You're on top of the world. Your thoughts are racing. You're talking really fast. Nothing can go wrong. And then you dip into a very, very deep depression where you feel so pessimistic, you feel helpless and hopeless, even battling to get out of bed, and in some cases even suicidal. So I think once the bipolar symptom starts to affect your daily functioning, where you can't function at work, your relationships are affected, then that should be a big indicator that something is wrong. You need to get some help.
Well, available treatment really means getting to a mental health service, and that's not so easy for everybody in South Africa. Our health services are very busy, especially our public health services. And if you've got a mental health problem, you kind of don't really feel always like going and queuing with people who've been in accidents and who've got other physical health problems. So there's a big disincentive. And when you get to the front of a health facility, somebody might look at you and think, well, this isn't so serious, so we're going to put you in the deprioritized group. So it can be quite difficult, even when you've gone to look for help, to actually get the help that you need. Bipolar disorder needs specialized treatment, so that makes it even more difficult to get treatment for most of the people in our country. So that's the downside. The upside is that if you do get there and you do get help, it can make a huge difference. And a combination of medication and psychological help can significantly reduce the number of manic and depressive episodes and the severity of those episodes.
Anonymous, good morning.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Morning, Kalani. Morning to your guest.
Yeah.
I'm a medical doctor and I have bipolar type 2. And I just wanted to highlight that in my experience, obviously in my training, but also in looking at this in a very holistic perspective, is that bipolar is really subdivided agnostically into type 1 and type 2. I don't know if you've discussed the type 2 yet.
No, we haven't. I was going to ask you exactly to tell us what type 2 is.
Well, type 2 is classified by normal depressive episodes, but the manic episodes as such, it's called hypomania, which will last for a minimum of 2 weeks or so, characterized by anxiety, irritability, and also increased mood to some degree. Not always that happy-go-lucky type feeling, you know. So there's such a broad spectrum of bipolar conditions. And the other thing as well that's important is that diagnostically, sorry, I don't know the lady who's on the show, but she's right.
Casey Chambers.
Yeah, that's right. She's hit the nail on the head that with bipolar or any psychiatric disorder, the diagnosis becomes a diagnosis when people can't function. You know, and there's a spectrum of moods that the whole population will go through, you know. Sometimes a person will be down for a couple of days, but we're not going to call it depression. And then when they're happy for excessive reasons, we're not going to now call it mania, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's only when the functioning becomes impacted and also the length of the time of the mood swings. 1 day or 2 days isn't going to meet the criteria for bipolar 1 or 2. You see, now this I've got this type 2. So it's not like I've ever I've had delusions or any psychotic behavior. But in the worst case, it's affected my personal life to the degree that I can't function at work because I become so irritable. As I say, it's one of the features of hypomanic episodes where even consulting with patients, you know, I just don't want to do it. I can be very short. So it does affect my work, but not to the degree that I'm delusions, you know. It basically makes life a hell of a difficult, but not impossible. But it's not worth not getting it treated, you know. You'll be surprised. Just because I'm a medical professional, it doesn't mean that you, first of all, want to admit that there's something wrong. And also, the diagnosis isn't just made on the spot. It takes time. You need to be monitored by a psychologist, a psychiatrist. You know, so my diagnosis took years to really come to, and it was so you can function. Well, when I say function, life goes on as fine as normal, but it's not. You're not living at 100%. You know, you're sort of getting about 70 and 80, and then you know the people start saying, "Listen, you can't carry on like this at work," and then you start thinking, "Oh, you know, hell, there's a problem."